Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Hopefully, you guys had a good February break at this point. Um, at this point, we are continuing the Roaring Twenties. We had briefly started it. If you're in 8A6, 8D6, 8B, 8C, or 8DE, we started this Roaring Twenties unit just before February break started. So you guys got a quick sense of Prohibition. You had a good understanding, hopefully, of Prohibition, what that was. And now we're going to look at the next topic of the Roaring Twenties. And again, the Roaring Twenties takes place from 1920 to 1929. And even though a lot of the work that women do throughout the women's rights movement here really take place in the 1910s, they actually officially get what they want starting in 1920. So we're going to take a look at this. We're going to see how the women's rights movement has a huge success throughout this time. And we're going to kind of look at why. So at this point, you have the focus question written down. You can pause the video if you need. But ultimately, let's look at some of the highlights of the women's rights movement. So when you're going to post the notes, you're not going to have to post the stuff in white, but I definitely need you to write down what's in yellow. But we want to kind of take a look at an overview of some of the major details of the women's rights movement. Some stuff is from 7th grade, some stuff is some things that we didn't really go over, but I want to kind of catch you up on some of the women and how they have gotten some rights throughout this time. Now, the Roaring Twenties is all centered around the word change. We saw Prohibition, we saw a big social change in terms of drinking alcohol and the way people acted. We saw the rise in crime. Now we're going to look at a social change, obviously, for women and how women get more rights. So the first big moment in women's rights and the women's rights movement takes place in 1848, the Seneca Falls Convention, where a lot of women and men get together trying to, preach for more rights for women. They write something called the Declaration of Sentiments. The women during the Granger movement, which was a movement throughout the 1800s, 1880s, where they try and get more political rights if they lived out in the Great Plains. Some women start to work in factories during the start of industrialization to make their own pay. Many women after World War I are going to be used to having full-time jobs, so this is going to help give them more rights. And we obviously saw before break, women led a huge charge in the temperance movement to ban the sale of alcohol. So when you kind of pull all these things together, women are getting more and more rights. They're getting more and more say in political society, in American society. But there's obviously one thing that is still missing, and that is obviously the right to vote. Where we last left off with the right to vote, remember, it was the 15th Amendment, and it was any male. If you were male, you were able to vote. Okay? If you weren't male, you weren't really able to vote. But that's where we last left off, so that's obviously going to change right now. One of the biggest successes occurs in the year 1920, when many women following the work of Susan B. Anthony, a woman you're going to learn about over the next couple of days a lot more. She helps create the feminist movement, a movement where women try and get full equality with men. Basically, the whole idea is anything a man can do, a woman can do as well. So it's a very general statement, but the biggest thing is they're going to, this is what's known as the first wave feminist movement. The first goal of the feminist movement is to get women the right to vote. So we're going to look at that today and see how that occurs. All right, so if you need to pause the video, please do. Otherwise, we are moving on. All right, so how do we get the right to vote? Well, we remember, hopefully, African-American males getting the right to vote. They needed to pass an amendment. So that's what we need to do. We need to pass an amendment. Now, throughout this topic, we've already seen the 18th and the 21st Amendment. Now we're going to look at the 19th Amendment. And the 19th Amendment is going to be the law that basically gives women the right to vote. Very straightforward, but I want to talk about some things that you're copying down in yellow. So all women above the age of 18 are granted the right to vote, and it starts in 1920. I think the first election they're able to actually vote in is the 1920 election. And they're going to get this through the passage of the 19th Amendment. Okay, so Congress has to get 2/3 vote through the House and the Senate. They're able to do that. They were very big in protesting for what they want. You can kind of see here, Women of the World Unite. You could see back here, obviously, women just walking around, protesting, saying votes for women. This was a huge way to try and get the government to change their opinion. And eventually, they do change the government's opinion in 1919, where the 19th Amendment is passed. Okay. Now, a huge way that they were able to get what they wanted was something called civil disobedience. Civil means you're able to handle things properly. Okay, if you were to do something civilly. Disobedience, though, is when you're obedient, you're obviously following the rules and laws. When you're disobedient, you are actively breaking the law or breaking the rules. So a student who's disobedient is someone who is not, doing the right thing in school, not paying attention, not following the class rules. So when a person practices civil disobedience, it's basically the refusal to comply with laws or fines. Okay, so basically, you're going to actively break the law because you disagree with the law, but you're more than willing to go to jail or you're more than willing to pay a fine for that. The most famous one I can think of is probably Rosa Parks, which I'll get into in a little bit, but different topic. Rosa Parks has to do with the Civil Rights Unit, uh, but she basically sat in front of the colored bus. She was breaking the law. She understood she would probably go to jail for this, but she didn't fight. She didn't riot. She didn't burn things down. She didn't hurt anyone. She just said, "Okay, you can take me to jail. That I understand. I'm breaking the law, but the law is basically crap. So this is why I'm doing this." So women in this women's rights movement were ultimately always doing this. I mean, this lady right here, Susan B. Anthony, back in the late 1800s, a great example of her is she would always show up every election day to vote, and she would cast a vote. And every time she casted a vote, she would get a fine in the mail. Okay, because she was a woman voting, and that's not illegal. That's not legal at the time. So she was like, "This law is stupid. I'm going to cast my vote. If you don't want to count it, that's fine. But this is my way of protesting, the bad law that women can't vote." So when you really think about it, she is acting in civil disobedience. She is disobeying the law, but she's doing it in a very peaceful way. All right. And just in a side note, I guess we could say, just in a side note, this civil disobedience approach would be the crucial when Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and the civil rights movement takes off, something that we'll learn about later on this year, where African Americans are trying to get more equality and end segregation. Martin Luther King will take a very similar approach throughout this time. All right. So, keep this in mind. Women would obviously go through this and kind of follow the same thing. All right. Now, if you're looking at your Google Classroom, okay, which, hopefully you guys can go to right now. If you're looking at the Google Classroom, give me a second to get there. No matter what class you're in, let's see, classwork. Let me share this tab. Okay. So please notice this is a 2-day assignment. So if you're watching this on, let's say, Monday, you have the next 2 days to do it. Your new next assignment won't be till Wednesday. All right. So if you look here, this particular lesson is a 2-day lesson. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to basically get a web quest. Okay. You're going to click on this web quest. There's 18 questions. There's a lot. This is kind of why I'm giving you 2 days. All right. And you also have here the 19th Amendment web quest. Okay. You have the 19th Amendment web quest. Okay. So you're just going to go to the Google Doc. You're going to answer the questions from the Google Doc. Sorry, it's just taking me a second to load. There it goes. All right, so you can go to this website here. Some of the sections, like the section titled Origin of Women's Suffrage, that might be a little bit different. Okay, that might be a little bit different. Okay, but some of these here are completely, follow along with the questions and you should be fine. So you go to the Google Doc, you answer the questions, and you should be in good shape. You can turn this in anytime over the next 2 days, and then you'll get a new assignment called Lesson 4 on Wednesday. All right, so you guys work on this. If you have any questions, you can email me. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, a good rest of your next 2 days, and I will talk to you all on Wednesday. All right, bye-bye, guys.